Hello, and welcome to the Decentralized Mind podcast. I'm your host, Emmanuela, and today I have Dr. Valerie Giagrande with me, who is an optometrist and is known as Quantum Eye Doc on YouTube and Instagram, always posting great content on how light affects your eyes. And I'm so happy to have you here.
Emmanuela, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to speak with you.
Awesome. Can you maybe introduce yourself for like a moment or two and how you got into, the light stuff
Yeah,
for our
absolutely.
listeners?
Sure. So I have been in practice about 23 years, just a conventional optometrist, went through all of the main things that we learn and going about my business until I started to have kids. And around my son now is 17, just for background. When he was 4, he started to develop some health issues, right? He started to have some neurological changes that were happening. And we tried, to figure out what was going on, right? I went to the pediatrician. All they said was give him a medication. I didn't like that answer. I started to go down the functional medicine route, which was fantastic. It started to move the needle quite a bit. And things were getting better. And then I had my own, with all that stress, I had my own issues. I had, kind of chronic fatigue issues. So I went to my own doctor, functional medicine, and he happened to be a follower of Dr. Cruz. And he basically said, you're not getting enough sunlight, which was, again, changed my entire life in that moment. I thought he was joking at first. And then started to just delve into the research. This was about 2017, completely changed my life, my kids' life, my whole family. We changed everything and saw how much everything changed. I mean, it really made a huge difference. It was kind of the final piece that put everything together. And then in my practice, I started to see the connections between so many eye issues and our circadian rhythm and quantum health, and started to educate patients. And I've been doing that ever since. And I think it's an interesting position that I'm in the conventional world, but I get to educate people on the importance of proper light environments and how it affects the health of the entire body. So again, that has changed everything. And you start to see that so many different eye conditions and obviously health conditions are linked to our light environment. So I just have been, again, researching ever since, studying ever since, and learning as much as I can, because I just think this is so fascinating and just so foundational for health. I feel like obviously everybody needs to know this. So, just trying to spread the word like all of us.
And, with regards to your eyes and your eyes improvement in eyesight, for example, I find that clients of mine who are really strict and they are actually, turning their home into a sanctuary, mitigated EMAFs, especially in their home, and watching the sunrise, getting regularly outside, sun in their eyes and all that, they see an improvement in their prescription in the first year. Have you
Absolutely.
seen that?
Absolutely. It happens, every day I see it. It's amazing how when people actually listen and make those changes, you definitely see improvements. It's fantastic. You can actually see it in real time. And then a lot of people will come back a year later and like, I remember what you said and I did all these things. And then we start to see, and when they see that improvement in their prescription, it just reinforces that they're doing the right thing, and it just makes them do it even more. And it is such a nice feeling that it really does help. Absolutely. And even with dry eyes, not even their prescription, but even how eyes feel, how much strength they have, how their eyes feel more moist and less dry and less irritated, and there's less strain and less headaches. There's just so many other layers of that, and so many things that can be improved upon. So it's just such a great foundation to have.
And one of the other core things as it relates to eyes that I find is that people come in extremely light sensitive to the
Hmm.
sun specifically. They're always going out with sunglasses, right? They can't see in the dark. They're always like, I need the light at night. I can't see. And then once they begin with sunrise and they mitigate their home, all of a sudden they don't need those sunglasses anymore and they are much more able to see better in the dark.
Hmm.
And one actually interesting personal experience as it relates to that about this topic, and then we can dive into, the eye health of it, is that a friend and we went to this outdoor spa and it started raining. So before it was raining, it was perfectly clear, sunny, right? Both of us have mitigated homes and we don't wear sunglasses, like we don't need them, all this. And we're outside in bright sunlight in the spa, no problem. Then it becomes clouded over, starts pouring. We go into one of the relaxation rooms. I obviously I don't bring my blue blockers to the spa. But there's these overhead LED lights in the relaxation room. We spend maybe about an hour until the rain lets up. The rain stops. It's still completely clouded, so way darker than it was prior to us going in. We both go out of the relaxation room into, the hot tub, whatever, and we're both squinting.
Isn't that funny how quickly it happens?
Yeah.
And it's just amazing when you hear that. You actually saw it in real time within that day. That's amazing after all the stuff that you're due. I mean, people come in, and I would say the most common complaint would be, I can't drive at night and my eyes are sensitive to light. So that is absolutely the most common symptoms. And dry eyes, I would say, is a third. And most people are wearing their sunglasses 100% of the time because they were told they have to or they feel like they need it. And at night, they have again, really hard time. So when I say the more you wear your sunglasses, the worse it's getting, sometimes it's a really hard thing to hear. And again, I just want to preface the sunglass thing with, I'm not recommending that we go outside, stare at the sun, do anything that's unhealthy. I'm not just telling people, throw your sunglasses away and get outside in the middle of the day. Like, there's a lot of safety issues. Obviously there's a lot of things we know that needs to be done to build up that tolerance. But what I am saying is that all the light that gets into our eyes controls the entire body and the health of our eyes. So that if you're always blocking those signals, you are no longer getting the proper signaling for your retina, for the eyes, for the entire body. Now, the more of this artificial unbalanced blue is just, it's too strong for our eyes to handle. We're not meant to absorb that. So our eyes are getting cooked. And then, of course, we can't handle natural light anymore. So we have to start by, getting outside in the morning, doing all the things that we know and we talk about. And I do find that when people are doing it correctly and getting those morning signals, and again, first hour of the day, there's barely any UV that can even harm us. So people are so afraid of UV, but getting out in the morning, you're conditioning your eyes to get, to start handling the stronger signals of sun before UV even shows up. And that's the key. We need that red and infrared light in the morning. We need the blue to gradually increase. We need everything to be balanced from sunlight in order for us to handle sunlight better. It just goes hand in hand. Now, I have very light eyes. I used to wear sunglasses 100% of the time, rainy days, cloudy days, and now obviously I don't, feel the need to do that. I will say that when there are dangerous reflections, things like that, depending on where we are, snow, if you're on the water all day, if you're driving, there are instances where we do want to block those signals, and we have to be a little careful because reflected glare is a little different from full spectrum glare, that's full spectrum sunlight that's not reflecting. So I just wanted to preface it with that. But yes, so the issue with light sensitivity is going to get worse when we're just indoors under artificial lights without any balance, without any infrared and red. And then nighttime gets even harder to see because that blue light that's unbalanced, or just artificial light in general, is going to dysregulate our vitamin A cycles. And vitamin A is crucial for vision. And at night, we are going to feel it even more because that's where our rods are being used. And there's so many more rods in our eyes and cones. It's like a 20 to 1. There's 20 times more rods than we have cones. And at night, rods are doing all of the work so that we can see at night. And we require vitamin A to see. And what happens with those artificial signals of blue, or just that unbalanced blue, it is dysregulating our vitamin A cycles. So in order to see, our vitamin A has to transfer from one form to another, and then it gets recycled. And during that recycling process, a lot of those intermediates can interact with that blue light and turn into this phototoxic or toxic form of vitamin A. And then it goes and damages other photoreceptors. It's damaging the membranes that we need to see, the retinal pigment epithelial layer. It's damaging our DHA, or those fat cells. So once those cells can't be replenished and start getting damaged, we are going to have a very difficult time seeing at night. And that shows up pretty, usually first. So when we start to improve our light diet and we start to make sure we're not oxidizing that vitamin A and we're not damaging it, we start to see that night vision is better. Our rods work better. If we're getting the proper signaling, our melatonin actually can help with night vision, because what happens with our eyes, not only do we know about circadian rhythm, we know that cortisol goes up in the morning, melatonin goes down at night, we know about wake and sleep and all of that, but in the eyes themselves, the retina has its own clock. So retinal dopamine is actually increased from sunshine in the morning, or for that morning signals of light. And retinal dopamine is what helps turn on our cones and helps us with visual contrast and just a good daytime vision. And what's supposed to happen at night is that retinal dopamine gets released. And once retinal melatonin gets released, dopamine goes down, and melatonin helps turn on our night vision. So we're not supposed to be exposed to these bright signals at night. Cones are not supposed to be overworked because they can get damaged. They're supposed to be regenerating at night from that melatonin. So we need melatonin to be working properly for proper night vision as well. And when we're exposed to these artificial signals of blue, we're knocking that out. We're just trying to stimulate more dopamine, and it's going to be too much for the retina, and you end up getting damaged. So yes, we have too much light sensitivity, poor light at night. Our pupils are also too dilated when we're exposed to all this blue because it's stimulating our stress system. And that's another thing that happens where our pupils aren't responding to light the right way when we're always wearing sunglasses and we're always exposed to artificial blue, which is a slightly different aspect. But then we go outside and we can't handle light because now our pupils aren't constricting the way they're supposed to because that sympathetic system is overreacting as well. So that was a lot. You just kind of threw everything in there.
Yeah, so a couple of things I want to, bring up that you mentioned. One about the sunglasses. What are your thoughts on a couple of things? Using blue blockers, like, yellow blue blockers or orange blue blockers instead of sunglasses when it comes to high glare environments, especially water, because I hear that primarily the one that's being reflected up would likely be blue light, given that water
Yes.
reflects blue up
Mm-hmm.
into your eyes.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. That's a great. Oh, go ahead. You had another question after that?
No, you
Did you
finish. I
want me
was
to
just
answer this
pausing.
first? Yeah, so that's a great point because if you're wearing sunglasses that only block ultraviolet light, now you're wearing something that's, first of all, making everything dark. So your pupils are going to have to dilate. And what are you getting more of? You're going to get more of that high energy visible light or that damaging high energy blue light without any balance because now your ultraviolet light is being blocked and now you're going to get more of that blue. So with the reflections, it's actually more damaging. It actually can be a problem. So you're better off if you are wearing sunglasses during those times to make sure that the sunglasses are also blocking that high energy visible or blue light. And that's where something like perhaps like a blue blocking glass would help. I happen to like the circadian friendly sunglasses, and I know there's a lot of controversy over these because they're marketed as a circadian sunglass, which makes no sense. So you would wear these in the morning. I think you know what I'm talking about. But the sunglasses from like Raw Optics, I actually got them. I never wore them yet, but I did have an incident when I was in Mexico, and the reflections from the sand were so intense that it physically hurt me. Like I've never felt that pain before, and I didn't have sunglasses with me. I was wearing a hat. I had to get off the beach. It was horrible, and I said, I kind of wish I had circadian friendly sunglasses. I would have worn them in that instance. So for something like this will block up to that high energy visible blue. So it's blocking some of the UV and the blue. And I think that might be more useful and safer in those instances when we do need to block the reflected glare, which is unnatural. So you're getting more UV and more of that blue. So yes, absolutely.
And what do you say about, like, okay, before I learned about the light stuff, I was really big into Weston A. Price, right?
Mhm.
And he explored a lot of indigenous communities. And even when I started learning about, all of this light stuff, and I read John Ott's book, he mentioned an interesting study about a northern Inuit community. I think it was northern Canada. I'm not quite sure.
Mhm.
That had, so prior, right, the indigenous communities up north, they made sunglasses, the only indigenous community to ever create something similar to the sunglass. But it wasn't a tinted screen. It was literally slits in wood or bone or whatever. So it's reducing the amount of light coming through, but not changing the spectrum at all because there are little holes, right, in those glasses. That's what they used to do. And, the scenarios where it's snow blindness and things like that from glare are very obvious, are way up north.
Mhm.
And so in this community in northern Canada, I don't know if you know the story or not.
Tell me. I've heard it. I'm not fully
Okay, so
interested.
they did a study stating that the sun is damaging because this entire small community had this disease called, I never know how to pronounce it,
Pterygium?
pterygium.
Pterygium.
Okay,
That's
yeah,
a
that.
growth on the eye. Yes.
Yes. And then, so John Ott was looking into this study and he was like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder, if they wore sunglasses or not, because there was no mention of that. And when he went to inquire, he found out that just not that long ago, maybe a year prior, I think it was, the entire community had been gifted special wraparound sunglasses that
Mm.
covered the entire face and let no light in, no natural light, I should
Right.
say. and the community had been wearing them religiously.
And they developed pterygium.
Yes,
Interesting.
yes.
Yes.
Which now
Right.
this is not a, I hear that, it's not a super serious eye disease or anything like that.
Right.
My point really is that we may be meant to reduce the amount of light coming in through the eye if we look at indigenous communities and use them as an
Mhm.
example, but I don't think we're ever meant to alter the spectrum.
Right. I agree with you. Yeah, absolutely. And I think with pterygium, most of the studies on pterygium will say it's from UV. That's a big thing that I learned. And you see it in tropical climates and you see it in people. But if you really look at pterygium, it's not just tropical climates where people are exposed to sun, it's windy environments. It's environments that are drying out the eyes and it's environments where there's a lot of reflection. So they also call it surfer's eye because it's, a lot of, again, the reflection, it's an altered spectrum. So yes, you are getting more of the blue, you're getting more of the UV, you're getting an amount that doesn't make sense in an environment that's very windy and dusty. And that's usually the key. So most people who come in with pterygium, I always ask them, do you wear sunglasses? A lot of them say yes, but a lot of them are working in environments where they're working outdoors in the wind, like just with all these, or construction, things where their eyes, the tear film isn't strong enough to withstand the insult over and over again. So pterygium, while yeah, it could be a UV component when there's extra reflection, I think altering the spectrum, you're right, that's basically one of the main causes there, which is interesting.
Yeah. Have you ever tried? Like, I've never tried it because, where I live and anytime I've been down south, I have never been in an environment where I was like, oh, I need sunglasses. That's never happened to me.
Mhm.
But have you ever tried using like red or not red, but orange blue blockers when the sun's like just glaring?
I haven't worn orange. No, I haven't. I would think maybe something like, so these are not blocking 100% of anything. This is just like the Viva Rays just kind of tones it down and kind of evens it out a little bit. I mean, maybe something like this, but no, I've never actually, again, the only time I was in that environment where I felt like I needed something was when I was in Mexico on a vacation with my family. And that was a year ago. Otherwise, I haven't felt that need because I feel like hats are wonderful. I wear hats a lot. I'll go under an umbrella. If it's not that I'm outside for 8 hours a day in the middle of the sun without sunglasses, like I am protecting myself because I do think hats are important. I do like that. I don't, there's a limit to what I am getting, but I do like that full spectrum because I feel like with a hat, yes, you are shading yourself, but you're still getting that full spectrum. Same thing with being in the shade. I love being in the shade. I think shade is so useful for us, especially if you're under greenery, you're getting extra infrared. So those are places where I think it would be more useful. But no, I haven't actually used the orange. I'll use these for driving at night. I love using the yellow glasses for driving at night, but during the day, I think the idea is good because again, you want more of that circadian friendly sunglass that's going to also block some of that blue if the reflections are off and the environment's not correct.
Now, you mentioned about dopamine,
Mhm.
and the eye and your pupil expanding and contracting. And, I'm obviously oversimplifying this slightly when I explain this, but I often explain to clients that, when you are dopamine deficient, meaning you're getting your reward tracks destroyed by artificial light, you never see the sunrise, you're not
Mhm.
outside and getting enough sun hitting your eyes and skin, your pupils lose their ability to contract fast enough.
Right.
Right. And then because dopamine controls muscle integrity, and that is,
Well, the
would
pupil
that be
The pupil
fair?
muscles are not skeletal. They're actually
No.
smooth muscles, right? But yes, so dopamine is going to help. It's actually the melanopsin actually controls our pupils as well, like the brightness. There's a link to pupil controlled from those melanopsin cells. So that would be blue light going to the brain. But yes, dopamine we need that high dopamine in general to help. But from pupils, from having the wrong blue light, that's what's going to destroy it. That's how I see it more.
Yeah, because I've heard, again, I didn't really dig into that much, but I've also
Mhm.
heard about dopamine in smooth muscle or involuntary muscle like the esophagus flap.
Yes.
If that's part of it is not getting enough exposure to sunlight, then you can tend to get bad breath more. I've heard of that, but I haven't really, looked into it extensively. But because I do see that people who are inside a lot, they're going outside and their pupils don't constrict.
Mm-hmm. They don't, right? Because they're so stressed. The sympathetic system is keeping those pupils a little more open as opposed to, our parasympathetic. But yes, I mean, retinal dopamine is involved in transmission. It's involved in actual contrast and vision and day vision and all the things. It's actually a neurotransmitter in our retina, so it's necessary during the day. The link to pupils in general, I tend to link again pupils more to the chronic blue light exposure, which might have a dopamine. I mean, it's all linked. We need the retinal dopamine in high, very high during the day, and we need melatonin high during the night. So, could be linked there.
Yeah. Do you know if, when we're going outside at sunrise and we're getting that sunrise light and as it's balancing red and blue, and then you have the added infrared, um, because I know I've read on how we often think that screens are increasing our dopamine levels, that we're getting too many dopamine hits. But the way I've understood it when I research it is that we're actually deficient in the, smooth, higher dopamine that we would get from natural light, from sunlight. And then because of not just that, but probably like endogenous opioid activity being
Hmm.
reduced because we're not exposed to UVB light and we're not outside, then we're more like craving whatever tiny hits we can get from, say, scrolling or a screen or anything like that. So maybe it's not so much that the intense blue light from screens is increasing dopamine too much, but that we don't have enough of it. And then that tiny little hit is like addictive because your body's
It's
like,
addictive.
but I want the sun.
It's so funny. I'm actually working right this morning. That's the post I'm working on next is,
Oh, nice.
why we are addicted to our screens and when we need to give our dopamine a break, absolutely. Yeah. So the melanopsin, it's interesting when we are exposed to bright morning sun, melanopsin obviously triggers our, suprachiasmatic nucleus for our circadian rhythm, but it also goes to our mood. There's also goes to different nuclei in the hypothalamus to actually generate mood and dopamine. And then we have the UVA link to dopamine with, tyrosine, which is going to help, be triggered um, by UVA, and then it's going to make more of that dopamine. So we need that balance. And when we don't get that balance, then we're flatlined. And then we are going to, that blue light just going to keep triggering that hit. But yes, and then we become flatlined because we've kind of used too much of it because we don't have enough from the light. And then we're just looking for those little hits. And then we become dopamine deficient and addicted. And it's hard. I mean, I feel it myself a little bit. Like as much as I do all this stuff, even I'm like, oh, I don't want to, I have to stop, like really concentrate on not looking at my phone throughout the day. It's like that hit. It's amazing what it does, how it hijacks our brain. But the more sunlight we get, the more darkness we get at night, we are going to help optimize our dopamine levels. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, in the summer, of course, I have the privilege and I'm lucky that I get to work outside and literally I'm pretty much in a bathing suit the entire day in the summer. But, so I'm getting a lot more of that, the endogenous opioids from the sun. And in the winter, I use a lot of cold for the same reason, right? To get that high. I feel a very perceivable high from cold exposure therapy. And also, I've heard, and now me myself, I don't wear glasses. I don't need glasses. I don't have any eye problems
Hmm.
myself, but I've heard from clients, from family who experience an improvement in vision with cold exposure. And I read about, the importance of mitochondria and their need for the fluctuations in temperature, especially cold, in order for them to not atrophy. Have you used, like or recommended cold exposure for improved vision or improved eye problems? Have you seen anything like that in your personal experience?
I think cold is going to help our mitochondria in general, but I actually haven't used cold with clients necessarily. I mean, when we're talking about overall health, cold is definitely a piece. When we're talking about metabolism, we have a lot of diabetic patients, a lot of diabetic retinopathy. So in that conversation, we can add cold to that. Absolutely. I tend to focus on, because I don't have that much time during an exam to go through everything. When I'm working with clients one-on-one, I can talk more about cold, but in my practice, I mean, I'm trying to explain all about circadian rhythm and light, within that time frame of an eye exam, in addition to doing the eye exam. So I don't necessarily talk about cold too much, but I do have a lot of diabetics and poor metabolism and all of that. So we can bring that into the conversation. But I have found that people just in general have improved their eyes just by doing all the circadian stuff. Um, so no, I haven't really, I don't, I can't speak to that because I haven't been able to add that to my
Have you
repertoire.
tried it?
Have I tried? Oh gosh. So I will say cold is the one thing. Now I'm in New York. I do walk no matter what the temperature is, I'm out there every day, definitely walking. Cold has been the one piece that I need to work harder on. My husband got me a cold plunge a year ago for Christmas, and he's so mad at me because it's still sitting. It's literally, I didn't put it together yet. Isn't that horrible? I love going to the beach. I love being in the ocean. I don't do it when it's cold. I'm kind of a big baby with colds, and I know that I need to. And I have to say, it's the one thing, as much as I know how much it helps, I have not embraced actual cold plunging. I will take a cold shower. I will do cold face, face splashes, things like that. I run my arms under cold water. I love cold in those little pieces, but no, I will admit that I am not someone to cold plunge, even though I really think it would make me so much better. Like I think it would help like lose the last few pounds that I need to lose. Like I think it would be the best thing ever for me, but I just no, I'm gonna admit it. I'm not very good with that.
Well, you gotta try. I swear by the cold. It took me a long time to get into it because I was a little bit of a chicken and I started with the face dunking. I did 6 weeks of face dunking and I started at 55 degrees for
So
15
what do you do
minutes.
now? Or what do you do? Like what have you reached now?
So I use a non-temperature controlled inflatable cold tub. Okay, so it follows a temperature, which I'm in Ontario. And so right now, for example, it's probably about 5 degrees Celsius, so 47 or
Wow.
so. But my record is 30 minutes at 3 degrees Celsius, which is 38 maybe Fahrenheit. Does that sound right?
Gosh, that sounds cold.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
now slowly, very slowly, right? I
good
started
for
with
you.
55 degrees, started 20 minutes, then I worked my way up to an hour at 55 degrees
Wow.
because you get warm. After like 5 minutes, you don't feel cold anymore at 55 degrees. Now
Okay.
at, 38, you never stop feeling cold, but you do turn numb. And then the high when you come out is just
Wow.
unimaginable, unexplainable. Anytime I go into the city where EMFs are really high, I will do an extended cold exposure and I do not rewarm. I use the cold to protect myself against EMFs. And everybody asks me, "What are you on?" because I want some.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Good for you. Good for
Yeah,
you. That
it's pretty
inspires
cool.
me. I should definitely start adding some cold exposure. I feel like that's the final piece that would be better. I love like my infrared sauna. I use that a lot, but that's the opposite. But still, I guess
Well,
making infrared light in the body, right? You're still adding some light
yes.
there. So I do find that that's going to help, obviously expand our
Yeah.
water and our hydration and all of that. So that's fantastic.
So, bringing it back a little bit to the eye, it's been kind of all over the news slash science currently on infrared light. I think it's a near infrared laser for wet acute macular degeneration.
Mhm.
What are your
Yes.
thoughts on that?
So the studies, like Glenn Jeffrey studies, he talks about 670 nanometer wavelength, which is more of that red light to help with macular degeneration. And I do recommend red light to patients. I just tell them about the research, and there are some devices that are made specifically for the eyes. There's one in particular that was made that he used in his studies, and I feel, safe using it or just telling people to look into it. I have it myself, and on days when I have to work and I know I'm going to be sitting inside all day on a screen, I do it in the morning, 3 minutes, 670 nanometer light, nanometer red wavelength light to help improve or just keep me healthy, I guess, from an eye standpoint. There's other research. There's a new device I know the FDA has just approved that is going to be in offices. It's going to cost quite a bit of money to do, but it has red and infrared. It has that 810 nanometer wavelength. There's another at-home device that also has a little bit of that near infrared. So I just hesitate with a near infrared to, if it's not a device that's designed for the eye and it's just a red light panel, obviously we have to be really careful because it can actually, too much light that's not designed for our eyes can actually be harmful. So of course it has to be eye safe, but I think it's fantastic. And I have seen, I actually have a really nice before and after of something really amazing where we had somebody with edema in the macula, and then it went away after red light therapy. So
Nice.
again, it's not something that it's not part of treatment that we do, like in office, because again, there's red light panels that you have to kind of go through the FDA and all that stuff. But I do give people the information to do their own research. And if they want, I tell them what's safe eye red light therapy they can look into, because just always have to be careful with that. But I think it's fantastic. Again, I do it myself. I think
And
it's
I think people don't listen to their bodies either. Like, when I talk about sun gazing, I often say, you want to be at about 20-degree angle away from the sun. And usually you want that when the sun is between 0 and 10 degrees over the horizon. Or
right.
what I like to say is before the sun turns yellow. You can see, if you're
Right.
looking at the horizon, if you're watching a sunrise, you can see the sun is red and then it turns yellow. So I'm always like, before it turns yellow, that's your time span. But people are so used to ignoring their bodies, even with the panel. It's like it's very bright. Now, I don't wear glasses, but I don't look at it either, right? Because it's too bright. If I looked
Too
at it, my
bright.
eyes would be like, ugh.
It's too much, and you can feel that visceral reaction, and too much can create cataracts. And I will say, I mean, I did have somebody say that they used a little bit too much red light, and then they developed cataracts because I don't think they were doing it right, or they weren't using the correct red light. They were using something that was too strong, and even too much infrared. I mean, morning sunlight, sunrise is the best thing you can do for your eyes. You don't have to worry about overdosing as long as you're, not staring, like you said, not staring directly at the sun the whole time at all. But morning sunlight has the perfect balance of red and infrared where we never have to think about it. So when we're using devices, we do have to be careful. Too much infrared can also be too much heat in a way, and that's not good for our lens either. So most red light therapy you see is more for retinal health. You don't really see it so much for lenses or cataracts, even though the lens does have mitochondria in the epithelial layer. So obviously we do need our mitochondria to be healthy. You see more red light for retinal support because of the mitochondria that's so dense and rich in the retina, and the exclusion zone water that's also being created. So it's
And
fantastic.
I think that brings it back to temperature as well. Like, think about when infrared light would be used in high doses in an indigenous or traditional world. Sunrise is always cool. Sunset is always cool. You put a fire on and you're looking into the fire when it's cold. So while you're getting that infrared light, you're actually in the cold and your eyes being surrounded by the cold, whereas you're not in this intense heat the whole time when you have a lot of, infrared light either. Because then if you're in a high heat, the sun's all the way up overhead, you can't look at it. So
Hmm.
it's not really applicable.
Right. That's a really good point.
That's kind of how I see it. But I do know a story which begs the question that maybe this should be something that should be researched. I don't know if you've heard of this one before, where again, it's a personal experience story, right? N equals one, of an older gentleman with acute macular degeneration. He was getting injections in the eye every month. And he broke his bone in his leg
Hmm.
where it was poking out, and he had a hip replacement. So this was like a complex issue. And he was given sessions basically to use a high quality red light panel, which went up to 1050 nanometers. And he was instructed, just whatever you do, be sure you wear the glasses. Now, he didn't listen. He healed his leg, didn't wear the glasses. I don't know the details. I'm sure he didn't stare at the device. But when he went back for his checkup for his eyes 30 days later, his doctor said he no longer had AMD.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm not
Cool.
surprised at all. But I'm wondering, even if he did wear the glasses, if you're just getting the systemic effects, because the red light is going to give you benefits even wherever you're using it, you're going to get systemic effects. So if he was using on his legs and he wasn't wearing the glasses, I mean, I don't know how much you would be getting just from that. It may have just been just because it was getting into his body in general. So even if he did wear the glasses, it would be interesting to see like what would have happened in that
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, that would be an interesting experiment,
Right. Yeah,
whereas
I mean, if you're giving your retina the energy it needs to start, so usually age-related macular degeneration is just we start getting drusen deposits or these waste deposits because those photoreceptor discs can no longer be regenerated, and the retinal pigment epithelial layer can't keep up, so you get all this waste. So if you're going to give the body or the eyes enough of that energy, it's going to be able to reduce that waste, and it can heal. The only time I would say you probably wouldn't see much of an improvement is if you're at a point where you have scar tissue already. Like if unfortunately you get to this atrophic stage where you actually have cells are gone. I think that's a big, but I do think that improvements can be made. I think it's much easier to prevent. But I do think we can see, I think, improvements at those early stages, especially. Same thing with even cataracts. I think we can improve so many things. I don't think it's necessary that we all get these age-related eye issues. I think if we have the right environment, we can prevent it. We can start to reverse things or help.
Yeah.
So many ways to support it. I mean, if we're doing the right things. I always am amazed by patients who come in that are in their like late 80s, and they're great. They're doing so well. They don't necessarily have cataracts that need to be removed. Their maculas look great. And I always like, what do you do? Like, tell me about your life. And they tend to be the people who live their life without stress, and they're outside, they're gardeners, they're just spend their time outside. They're with their families. They have no, it's just an amazing life. They're not sitting in front of their screens all day, I'll tell you that. They're definitely not sitting in front of screens. Are they wearing sunglasses? Not necessarily. They're not. They're just outside living their lives, and they eat, I guess older people I feel like tend to eat a little bit better because it's how they grew up, right? They're not used to all the food that younger people eat, so they tend to eat better. They're eating more in season. All of those factors play such a big role in our health. So it's not inevitable that every single person has to get a cataract. Every single person will get a disease that needs to be, fixed. So
And from an evolutionary perspective, it doesn't make any sense. The second you lose your eyesight, you're dead meat. If you're living, in a world where you could be killed by a bear, for example, it would
mhm.
be horrible. And, Explorer reports and all of the research on indigenous communities does show that as they aged, they always had excellent eyesight. They were able to see very well, and because again, it doesn't make sense. You'd be dead.
That's a good point. Yeah. I always say with cataracts, I mean, the lens is turning yellow over time. And why is it turning yellow? It's like a blue light filter. So it's that
Yeah.
high energy visible blue, that is one of the biggest drivers, I think, especially when it's just, again, that unbalanced blue that doesn't make any sense. Just the world that we live in. And the dehydration component and their, oxidative stress from all of our mitochondrial dysfunction, all of that plays a role in things
Yeah,
like
and then when we talk about dehydration, we get into, non-native EMFs, and that
Mhm.
would be a whole
Yeah,
other story for a whole other
right.
episode.
Absolutely.
But that's definitely a big piece too, whereas
Mhm.
it makes you really dry in general.
Yep.
And you know, I always like to promote that we address light from the source. Not just because not everyone likes to wear glasses, but because, we have non-visual receptors in our skin
Right.
too.
Right.
And there's so much we could do nowadays. There's so many, free apps or inexpensive apps you could put on your computer, your phone. You could still, I know here in Canada, and I believe in the US as well, because I do have a lot of clients in the US, you can still get incandescent bulbs from Amazon. And I mean, I'm not sure, I've never tested it, I don't have a meter, but I don't believe they flicker. Do you know if they flicker?
Um, so I actually should test them because I actually have them in the rooms. The one I use at work does not flicker. I have a Nira bulb from Scott Zimmerman, and that doesn't seem to
Okay.
flicker. It's not really, I mean, I guess it's similar to an incandescent because it does have infrared in there, so that doesn't flicker. I don't know actually if it's plugged into the same. I'm gonna check that. I'll get back to
Yeah,
you.
I'd love to know. I'm only able to test with like slow motion.
Right, that's
I
kind of what I test
know.
with too.
Okay, so I know I have black lights, UVA LEDs.
Hmm.
They don't flicker according to my slow motion video. All of
Right.
my incandescence bulbs don't flicker. My halogens, I have a pair of red halogens. That's the only thing I could put in one of my rooms. Those do flicker. I know that. But interestingly enough, I'm not sure why. Maybe because the filament burns or what it is. I don't know. But I mean, flicker is a big thing too. And now I want to kind of tie this in a little bit to how light and addressing our environment changes how we think, because that's why I named my podcast The Decentralized Mind. what has been your personal experience as you made your way into this journey, watching the sunrise, being mindful of your light hygiene, your environment, spending more time outdoors? Has that changed how you approach difficult situations in life or how you think about, birth or death?
So interesting. That's a great question. I think first and foremost, getting better sleep changes everything. Like, I mean, just the fact that when I first started, and around 2017, I think that's when I got my Aura ring as well. So I think I was delving into the whole functional medicine and the Aura ring. I still wear it. I put it on airplane mode. I know it's not the best thing to wear because it's metal and it has I know I probably don't need it anymore, but I still wear it. But anyway, my sleep was a mess. I remember, and I've always gone to bed early. I've always been tired. I'm just one of those, tired people that I was always like an early to bed, but I never slept. I never slept fully. And then when I did this and I started to sleep, I mean, it changes everything. A good night's sleep is just changes your entire outlook on how you think, how you feel, the mood that you get, the happy mood you get just from being outside, the endorphins that get made. I mean, it's just it really does change everything. I mean, just being outside, I just love just watching the birds. I mean, it's just those little things and just being out there grounded and getting the sunlight changes like just puts everything in perspective, right? It's just such a much better day, much better life. Then we get into the whole, energy and how are we like I don't know, the whole death thing. I started getting more into this like spiritual aspects of energy and consciousness and all of those things and just how we're all connected and um I mean that's kind of a whole different story, but I just feel like it just gives you a better perspective on what we're really designed for. And it just takes us out. I mean, a day where you're on a phone, I always tell my kids when they're on their phones for, stay over the weekend, I say, when you look back on your memories of what we did, like say this weekend or this week, are you going to remember the TikTok videos you watched, or are you going to remember being outside and playing, just getting out there and throwing a ball around or just doing the things that you need to do? Like, what don't you understand like how much more fulfilling it is just to be part of nature? It's just everything's full circle. Even just being around the trees, you think of all the energy that's flowing and transferring between, organisms and how everything's moving and everything's vibration. And I just love to think about that, like how nothing is like everything that we do is just energy, right? And we want to be in the right resonance or the right coherence with light and with energy and how Wi-Fi destroys that and blue light destroys that and just even our mindset. Like there's so many, it changes everything. It just starts layer by layer, right? Of just getting out there with nature and being part of the energy flow of nature. That sounds kind of cheesy, but
And allowance, right? I think allowance, like as it relates to death, the reason why I, got the idea for the title and these kinds of discussions is because I lost my horse and I took a different path in facilitating the loss than I saw people around me taking in allowing aging older animal to take their last breath without intervention isn't something that I tend to see at all in our world, even with humans. When we think about losing a loved one or whatever it is, we want to hold on, preserve, change that moment, freeze it, and prevent life from happening, whether it's ending or beginning. We always want to control it. And it made me think, does being outside, does doing all these things maybe allow us to allow life to happen instead of needing to be in the driver's seat?
mm, that's beautiful. Interesting.
Just a thought.
Yeah,
And
I
I,
love
I see changes in people as well when they do that. I see changes in their attitudes, their thoughts, their susceptibility, suggestibility, all these
it.
things.
Right? I mean, if you have high levels of dopamine, you could think better, right? I mean, that's part of the problem with our addicted world is that we're comparing our world to our lives to everybody else on social media. I mean, we have this low dopamine. We're very prone to being, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? I mean, we can be programmed very easily when we have that low dopamine, obviously. I guess
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, yeah. And I think that, I mean, I don't know how much, obviously the eye is, would it be fair to say that, a lot of the neurotransmitters are starting in the eye and then being
Mhm.
communicated into the brain?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. There's a direct line from the light that gets into our eyes to all the neurotransmitters and every hormone, every neurotransmitter. It all depends on what we're absorbing, what we're getting. Like that light is a nutrient for our mood. It's a nutrient for our hormones, for our energy, for everything. And again, the skin too. We do have to, I tend to sometimes forget about the skin or not mention the skin as much, but you're right when you mentioned as far as, wearing glasses, blue light blocking glasses, but what about our skin? Like we still want to make sure that our lighting environment, like if we have all these LED lights on at night, these overhead LEDs, which a lot of people have those high hats in their homes, and you're wearing these orange glasses at night, not these, but orange glasses at night or red glasses, you're still getting light coming in from above. You're still getting the wrong lux, and your skin is still being um, triggered. So it's still not the right environment. We definitely want to work on the entire environment, not just what we have on our eyes as far as eyeglasses. So that's an important piece as well.
Yeah, I do the same way that we can hack glasses, like eyeglasses, when you're outside. And I tell people just put them not so close to your eyes and put
Mhm.
them a little bit, forward on your nose so the light can enter in. It's the same thing for blue blockers. And the reason why I'm always like hammering on my clients, I'm like, you can't wear your glasses and put your lights on. No,
Right.
you have to change your light bulbs.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Otherwise, it's not the same. It's nowhere
Right.
near the same.
It's not. It's not.
Yeah. Well, to kind of wrap it off, maybe can you share how listeners can find you and follow you or work with you, whatever it is that they're looking to do?
I think that the easiest place would be on Insta. I do have a website. It's linked. If you go on my Instagram, Quantum Eye Doc, you'll see a link to my website, which has resources, free resources, other resources, links to how you can work with me. Same thing on YouTube is also Quantum Eye Doc. So those are basically the two places where I spend the most time. Again, I am working on new things coming down the pike, and it's been a little bit of a challenge to balance, working and then using my days off to do that. So it's a little slower than I imagined when I first started, but I'm working on it.
For sure. Well, thank you so much for coming on our podcast. And I want to thank the listeners for listening. And we'll see you all next time.
Thank you, Emmanuela.